I'm going to start recording. So this will be recorded for everyone that wants it for the conversation today. Thank you all so much for joining the today's webinar. Super excited for the conversation. It's timely, as we know, right? Offers are going out, interviews are being had before the holiday season is upon us, right? Want to make sure that our team and everyone has a best in class engagement strategy for all of those campus hires that are going to be joining your organizations in the summer. Just some housekeeping before we dive into the conversation. We're going to hold all the questions until the end, but please feel free to use the chat. Drop any questions that you might have in the chat for myself or either Justin or Jessica in the conversation today. We'll make sure that we cover all those questions at the end of the conversation. So feel free to use that as needed. But with that, let's dive in. The conversation I mentioned is very timely. We're going to be discussing all things keep warm and best practices. And Justin and Jessica have two amazing and unique perspectives on candidate engagement, right? In what we're going to be covering here today. We're going to be really covering and focusing on kind of the what, the why, and the how of keep warm engagement, best in class engagement strategies for all of you, right? Putting all that effort this past fall and maybe still going on into bringing on these campus hires into your organizations. And we're super fortunate and I'm lucky to be able to have Justin and Jessica by my side to so that y'all can hear their perspectives as much as I'm sure you would love to hear my voice. They are the experts in this. And so we'll make sure that we really kind of let them drive the conversation as a whole. Just a quick intro about myself, and that is a wedding photo of mine because my headshot was from like 2017, and I looked a lot younger than I do in this one here. Parker Pell, one of the co-founders here at Abode. If you haven't heard of Abode or you don't know what Abode is, Abode, we're really focused on candidate engagement and program management, everything from intern keep warm to alumni networking and alumni engagement to your early ID programs. We've helped teams to really focus on staying in contact and maintaining engagement with all of those hires and all of that effort to make sure that those that sign that offer, that join your program, ultimately join the company as a full-time employee, hopefully post-grad. Recently moved based in Montgomery, Alabama, and feel like I have a master's in campus recruiting. We started the company when myself and my two roommates were juniors in college back in 2017, and it has been an awesome ride into and learning about everything early career and early career recruiting in the conversation. So that's a bit about myself. Jessica, I'll kick it to you just for a quick introduction.
Yeah, so my name is Jessica Coons, and I work at Lithko Contracting. We're the nation's second largest concrete contractor in the US. So we build lots of things that, could be on the campuses where you go, lots of parking garages, data centers, manufacturing facilities. And so our early career program consists of interns and project engineers who are entry-level folks. And my job as the program manager is I tell to make the recruiters and the campus talent specialists to make their lives easier. So I work to develop scalable solutions, improve processes, and as many of our businesses are growing, our programs are growing, but the number of people on our team is not. And so my job is to make that work.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. And Jessica is humble in that she is an expert on all things candidate engagement and keep warm. And so we're very excited for her perspective in the conversation today. And Justin, kick it to you for an introduction as well.
Hi, everyone. Justin Margherio. I work for Experian. You probably know us as the credit score company, but we're more than that. We create data products for consumers and businesses. So like when you go and buy a house, we're there on the back end giving data to see if people can lend to you. So we're a global data company. I've been with Experian for 3 years. I'm our talent acquisition lead, which is just a fancy way of saying me and my team of two recruit and hire our interns, as well as our two rotational programs, MBA rotational program and a tech accelerator program. So we recruit, hire, and then we manage the student experience from an intern perspective once they're here with us. Been with Experian for 3 years, but have 11 years in this early career space. So glad to be here, glad to share our experience and what we've learned and what we hope to learn. So glad to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, both of their perspectives are going to be amazing in the conversation today, and I'm super excited to dive into everything that we're going to be discussing. I always do like to just kind of kick off these types of conversations with a bit of data that I think we at Abode continue to think about as we obviously build our platform, but also as we consult with our partners of what are and what do these early career hires that we're putting all this effort into giving these offers so early, and it seems like it's going earlier and earlier for anyone in the audience that has 2026 and 2027 offers accepted or extended. You're not alone in that. It seems like it's becoming so much more of a common practice, I would say. But there's a lot of data I think that's key to point out as we think about right, how are we crafting and executing kind of a premier key form for our interns, our conversions, our early ID program participants, any talent program that has that extended time between an offer and a start date. I won't go through all of this data. You can read it here, and I'll make sure I send everyone the slides after the conversation today. But just a few that I think really kind of stand out for me that I like to highlight here. One is 70% of Gen Z wanting the way to build relationships with their peers and their future teammates. Sounds super easy, right? Let's just create a LinkedIn group or a group me, throw everyone in there, and then they're going to start chatting and become best friends. And we all know it's not that easy, right? So how can we ensure that there's not just a community for our participants to connect with one another, but there is either facilitated or driven mechanisms to where we can breed that connection amongst our program participants that have like-minded interests and hobbies that Gen Z value a lot more than just previous work experience. I can promise you, if Jessica and I were an intern and we both knew that we loved margaritas, that would be something we could bond over, right? And get together with and resonate with each other more so than just our work experience. And so when we think about community, I think there's a redefinition of how can we provide an open space that breeds that connection for these individuals that are Gen Z that think in value more than just the work experience themselves, right? And then the other one I think that's super key is 61% of Gen Z reporting that they feel anxious or on edge, right? After they sign that offer. For a lot of them, whether it's an early ID or an intern, it's probably their first professional experience overall. And there's two types of personalities, type A, type B. If you were looking at me, I was always one that was like, did I do everything that I needed to do? Do I have all the information right? I was always reaching out to my recruiter, making sure, hey, is everything okay? Have I done everything I need to do? Where my co-founder Ben is a complete opposite, right? But you have to be able to cater your strategy to both of those personalities, right? And I think that that's a big pillar of what we'll be discussing today in the conversation, is making sure that our engagement strategies before program, post program for alumni, right? They are really meeting the expectations that this generation ultimately has. So enough of the data, and we'll dive into and talk about this throughout and anchor the conversation in this data. But I like to start with a basic question. It seems basic, but there's a lot of intricacies I think that we can dive into the conversation today. Is, what is a key form strategy? Jessica, I'd love for you, having experience in this, how do you define a key form strategy at Lithko Contracting, and what does that look like in your organization today?
Yeah, so for me, the basic definition is just engaging with candidates between when they accept an offer and when they start their role. We know in early career that can be, 8 weeks, it can be 4 months, it could be 6 months, it could be, 8, 12 months, which is very different from the kind of standard talent timeline. And so for us, that includes three primary pillars, thinking of engaging them, like talking to them, giving them content, teaching them about things. The second pillar is really preparing them for their role. We have this really large amount of time. And, like you said, I'm similar to you, Parker, where I'm like, okay, have I done all the things? Do I know all the information? Like, how am I going to be successful? We want to give them that information so that way they can be successful on day one. And then the third pillar, like you mentioned, is just connecting early career program participants with each other. They come from all over the US. Even whenever they get to us, they might be in kind of disparate job sites. There might only be one intern on the job site. So they might not know that there are other interns in their location or even at the company as a whole. And so making sure that they know those people. Um, and so how we have been able to do that, I think for us, it became necessary when after I think it was summer of 2022, um, our reneg rates skyrocketed. I mean, they more than doubled. It was like kind of outrageous. And so we're like, all right, we need a way to address this. And so more than just like, oh, let's tell the managers to reach out to their interns before they start, or like let's forward them a, LinkedIn post that to show them about the company.
Mhm.
And the primary outcome really was to reduce the renegs, but since implementing it, we've seen additional benefits like improving their job readiness, kind of like I was talking about, like on day one, they're ready to go because they don't have to remember what all these weird acronyms are because they've been hearing these weird acronyms for the past 6 months.
Mhm.
And then better understanding of the position that they'll be working in. And we've actually seen more engagement from managers and business leaders, which is something I'll talk about more later, but I'm very excited about, has been kind of a side effect of implementing this program.
And Justin, I know you're coming at it from a different perspective, right? Experian is going into what I would consider is kind of your first fully fledged and kind of like executed key form in experience. Like, what have been some of the pillars of kind of that vision and that thought process for you as you think about kind of that ideal key form strategy at Experian? Oh, maybe we lost Justin
No, he froze.
potentially with Wi-Fi. That's okay. Hopefully he comes back. Sorry, everyone, for the technical difficulties here. But Jessica, kicking to you just while Justin kind of figures out his Wi-Fi and whatnot. As you think about kind of the definition of your kind of keep warm strategy, have there been any kind of like unique learnings or like differences in the strategy that you imagined versus like an experience in reality, like what you've learned throughout that as you kind of think about kind of putting together that strategy for you?
Yeah, I think the job readiness thing has been, more of an impact than I expected. Just because, so I can also mention I have a master's degree in higher education, and so I have a lot of like kind of theoretical knowledge about adult learning and that kind of thing. And so um, we've been able to really impact job readiness because we've been utilizing this longer period of time to provide them with the information that they will need and use on day one, and reinforce that. And kind of that's the key to education, is like reinforcing things over a long period of time, they'll understand it. And so, I think we often have these, ideas and plans for internships to be really impactful and that they'll make a meaningful business impact. And a lot of them really are. But we do have to reckon with that we have about, 12-ish weeks on average, I think, with these folks. And so if they're spending the first 2 to 3 weeks, trying to understand, like, like I said, what does the company do? So what are some of these terms that, we think about, that we know of, that an intern coming in like may not have heard of the word like vertical, like, okay, what's an industry vertical? Like, what does it mean to acquire a company, or, those types of things. And we can share that knowledge with them earlier and reinforce it throughout this, keep warm period. And it, engages them with meaningful content where they are, excited about it because, they're getting excited about their internship or their new job. But they're also learning things that they're going to be able to use. And so I think that's been one positive thing that's been really different from kind of whenever I imagined it was just like, okay, we're just going to keep reminding them that like you have an internship, we're thinking about you, like please don't renege, to like we're really preparing you to make a meaningful impact very quickly.
Totally agree with you. And I think that leads us into a good discussion around like, I think everyone recognizes the importance of a key form strategy, but there are a lot of impacts that whether you have a keep warm and engagement plan for your interns or for alumni post program or for your early ID program participants that might not be thought of initially, but are impacts that you can see by having a really well-defined keep warm, as we see Justin hopefully jumping back in here today. We'll keep going, Jessica, but while Justin gets set up here, how has having a defined keep warm strategy at Lithko Contracting impacted the organization? And can you talk a bit about some of the feedback and data that you've gathered that reinforces maybe your thought processes on why you continue to invest in your keep warm strategy?
Yeah. So I think for us, we have some of those, key data points that we've mentioned, like our conversion rates have gotten better, our, reneg rates have decreased. I think one of the most interesting things for me is that we have always had people who quit very quickly, usually within like the first week of starting their internship, because construction is not for everyone. And we try to be very upfront with people about the work that they'll be doing, but there's only so much you can share, during an interview. But one of the most interesting things for me from last summer is that I think all of the people who quit kind of within that 2 week period were people who didn't engage in Abode at all. They didn't look at any of the tasks. They like may or may not have registered their account. And so they just weren't prepared for the work. And, I'm excited to kind of continue to track that connection between the engagement in Abode and overall persistence in the program, in addition to the conversion retention.
Yeah.
Do you want me to keep going or?
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. So yeah, I think the data as far as like standard, conversion and retention rates, the anecdotal feedback from the program participants, as well as business leaders. We added we have like a standard, post internship feedback survey, and we added a section at the end about, how did you feel about Abode? Was it good? That kind of thing. And about 90% agreed that it prepared them for their role and that the content was relevant and that the platform was easy to navigate. And we did have some lower scores on whether connecting with other interns was valuable. And so we're adding a new initiative this year to have more of the returning interns and the converted interns guide more of those conversations and be the catalyst for those relationships.
I love that. And that'll get into a bit of the conversation later around implementing Keep Warm and how you can effectively, um, you know, nail two birds with one stone by leveraging your alumni and conversions as a mechanism of your kind of next class of incoming hires. Justin, hey, good to see you back. All good. We kept it rolling here.
Sorry,
But
everything went down. My
all,
apologies.
all good. No worries at all. For everyone, you mind just kind of chatting through as your team prepares to launch your first Keep Warm strategy, like what's your vision kind of this Keep Warm program, and then kind of the steps that internally you all have taken to kind of prepare the team for this implementation of kind of your first Keep Warm?
Yeah, so our vision of our strategy is very similar, if not identical to what Jessica mentioned, right? So we are looking for them to create excitement, right? We're extending offers 6 to 9 months out prior, right? So we know they all have the wandering eye too, right? They look, so we're trying to keep them engaged and excited and wanting to join us. And then also building connections. So Experian is our internship program is 100% remote because all of our employees are remote. So they don't actually go to a physical location. So how are we helping them build connections when they're never going to see somebody probably in the flesh other than this virtual environment that we live in? So how are we connecting them together, connecting them with their managers, with their peers, so they feel a part of something, right? We have got a great culture here at Experian that we do very well in a virtual environment, but how do we get that for them in the short 12-week time in the onboarding, right? They're with us for 12 weeks. So how do we get them up and running quicker and faster so that they can add more impact and they can experience and they can feel like they're part of something, right? They're adding impact, but how do they do that quicker and faster? Because that's what they want out of this experience, right? They want that applying their education to their real world experience. The steps we've taken, right? We're creating videos now, right? So my team is recording things to invite them and welcome them and highlight some of what we're trying to share. We're creating guides. We're pairing them with peers and people internally to help them build that. So we're in that full on planning mode, right? Getting things added to Abode, right? Building out our journeys, building, getting all that stuff so that we can go live shortly after we hire a good chunk of our interns. Creating events, right? Thinking through what content do we want them to experience while they're here. So
Justin, on that note, just a question too, some might have is, like allocation of time and resources to put towards, these initial steps in taking. How have you all thought about that? Has it been a lift that has been like uncontrollable? Has it been manageable? Just thinking for anyone in the audience that might be in a similar position where they're like, all right, we realize that we need to kind of level this up in this kind of engagement strategy.
definitely a big lift, right? I mean, at least in my role in my team, like we wear two hats, right? We're recruiting, but then we take that off and then we think about the experience. So my team is now more than ever having to think through, let's focus on recruitment, but also let's focus now earlier than we have in the past. How do we build that program or how do we build that on there? But it's something we know we need, and team is amazing and they're willing to do it and they know we need to do it. So it has taken time, but we're all passionate about it. So it's fun and engagement in the process, right? And pulling other people in with us, right? Like our employer marketing team, like we're pulling people in to help us, and that's helping our program internally be seen as well, you know?
Yeah. And I think something we hear a lot too, which is kind of just a good like best practice idea is you have probably a lot of interns that converted from 2024's internship program. Like, hey, shoot them a Keyform touch point and be like, hey, we're looking for a 30-second video to like introduce and share some feedback on your internship experience last year. Like, would you be willing to jump on something and send it to us? Right. Easy way, again, right? Trying to think about how we can most effectively manage, right, all of the different types of content that you're creating and both engaging a former intern, but then also for it being the kind of next intern class as well. And Jessica mentioned that I think the fruition in like really the kind of aha moment for her was right, reneg rates were skyrocketing, but also a lean team needing to be more efficient were kind of two pillars of why investing in their Keyform was important. Any anything you would echo from experience perspective, like as the team lead, you were like, okay, this is like why we need to do this.
Yeah. We saw our biggest renege rate last year, right? Um, More than I want to mention. It was like 26%. It's very high. And that's hard to refill, right? So how do we to then on the back end try to refill it or cancel the roles, which you never want to do because the business is counting on them. That was one thing. And then also I mentioned it, our connection point, right? We're in this unique environment. We're virtual. They never will never most likely ever see their manager, right? So how do we build that early on so that they feel a part of something before they even join us? Which I hope then helps reduce the renege rate, right? Because they connect with us, they know with us. We recruit virtually too. Like we're in this virtual environment and experience, so everything we do is virtual. Um, so yeah, those two key
Totally.
points, right? And then you know why now, right? It's an investment, right? We've got a great program, right? We've been ranked top 100 the last 2 years, so it's like how do we keep building onto our program and making it bigger and better? And I think this is the next iteration of that. Of we have it great while they're here, but how do we make it great before they join us?
Totally. And I always like to, nerd out on this stuff and emphasize kind of the long-term impacts of your key form, right? Jessica mentioned obviously conversion rates increasing, uptime and readiness to start work, right? Decreasing from a time of like, hey, they are a fully kind of ramped up employee. As you think about the long term as well, even Justin, for you just starting right 3 years down the line, looking back at performance of former intern classes that you've invested in basically right their first 3 years of staying super in touch and informed with them, like how are they performing better, are they getting promoted faster, a lot of kind of byproduct, I think, analytics points that you have internally within your HRIS system that can also be something that can be attributed and teams attribute to kind of their key form strategy overall. Now, it's no shortage or question here, right? Implementation of this can be a lift. If you don't have a system and you don't know where to begin, where can I start, right? If you do have a system in place, kind of how best to implement and ensure that you're not just checking the box of I have a key form strategy. Great. It's how am I ensuring that the key form strategy is measured and actually working and attributing to the goals that ultimately kind of you have when you are starting your key form strategy, right? Jessica, I'll kick it to you. Just kind of open the conversation and let you share your screen really quickly, just so that you can share kind of at Lithko kind of what y'all are thinking about and how you're doing it as well.
Yeah, so I think I will confirm that it is a heavy lift to begin with, but to really be thinking about those hours as like, you know, an investment. It's almost like the hours that we spent last year setting this up, we don't have to spend those hours anymore because it's been done, and we can reuse the vast majority of it, and we can, improve on what we have. Whereas in previous years, it kind of feels like Sisyphus, where you're just like continuing to push the boulder up the mountain every year. And this way we're actually like, building something. Um, I think for us, we start off pretty heavy with, whenever someone logs on for the first time, we want them to like see all the resources, see a ton of, start off with like kind of some of the most difficult tasks, but then kind of trickle information after that. And for us, it's also about expectations. So we tell people they will spend 15 to 20 minutes every 2 weeks. And within each task, which I will show, we show how long we expect them to take it to complete. And so this kind of, I think, hopefully helps them engage, not feel like it's, homework or something, like busy work or something that, is going to take a million years. Um, so we have, some of the basic things that you would expect in, like a link to our website, a checklist of like connect your LinkedIn profile, introduce yourself, that kind of thing. Who are the people who are on the team, that kind of stuff. I think one thing that I wanted to highlight was, so we in the past had always, required is a strong word. We strongly requested that managers, whenever we would train the managers, that they reach out and connect with their intern. Well, how do you track that? Like, do I email 125 managers and say, hey, did you reach out yet? Did you do that yet? Blah, blah, blah. So what we've been able to do now is in this, task, we talk about what integration is. We have someone who, like, kind of like you mentioned, Parker, this is like a 54-second video about what it is like to, work with a manager during your internship. And then we give them, one of their tasks is to talk to their manager. And this is, just information about like, all right, think about how you're going to introduce yourself. What questions are you going to ask your manager? Figure out what about the job you need to know, talk about your goals. And then they have kind of a checklist, like find out who they are, reach out to them, that speak with them, and then this little reflection of like, when did you meet, what did you discuss, do you have any questions? And so this has allowed us to have accountability on both sides of that relationship, as far as like we've trained the managers, we've told them you need to speak with them, that kind of thing, but also we want the intern, like this is their internship, they need to have some ownership too, and this gives them the ownership and allows our team to not have to email 300 people to ask if they've had a phone call.
Totally, totally. And thank you, Jessica, for that. And I think as you think about Jessica too, from y'all's standpoint of kind of centralizing that experience in Abode, has the feedback from the interns, it sounds like, has been positive of just kind of having everything in one place.
It's been very positive. And it has even been, I think, from the interns, but also from the team, where whenever we started, the team was kind of like, oh, another platform I have to check, more messages. Like, I don't want to have to log into another thing. But now I get the questions of, hey, can we put this in a Bode? Can we just automate this? Can we make this happen when it's supposed to? And often the answer is yes. And that has been very, very good and exciting feedback for us.
That's awesome. And Justin may be getting some ideas as well. I saw your eyes go
I'm
up.
putting down some things and I need to connect with you on the side because I want to learn more.
Mhm. But
way more in depth than what I had envisioned at the moment, but now I need to up my game.
but in
Just to
Justin,
learn all these things.
I think that's a good question though, right? Like y'all are about to launch your first keep form. Like, how are you thinking about balancing, just like experimentation of kind of different, unique engagement ideas versus, kind of structure? And are there any specific areas around like events or mentorship or anything like that that you think are going to be critical in your strategy?
Like this first year is entirely experimental, right? Like what works for her might not work for my organization, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is important, but love to pull on that. So we're doing very struct. Our initial ideas are very structured things, right? Um, we're, I'm going to add manager stuff like you did, but like we're having coffee chats to help them learn about Experian and help them learn about their goals that they need to set. Like structured, join us at this time, right? At the specific point, we'll have like a webinar kind of experience to get them to join. And then experimental wise is kind of really around our social piece behind this, is what I'm calling like how are we going to get them to talk with each other so that when they join us, they're they know somebody, right? Whether it's virtual or not, like polls and networking and connecting with them and things like that is kind of really our what I would say more experimental to see how they connect, right? Um, we do that when they're with us. We connect them while they're on assignment with us, but we're trying to push that even before. And it's kind of hit or miss, right? You have those type A, type B, super outgoing, not super outgoing people, right? So it's kind of I'm gonna say it's a crapshoot. Will it work? Will it not? But it's kind of how we're thinking about it. Very structured of like, join us. We're going to teach you. But then also here's some fun, right? Like share a picture of where you're going for spring break. Like, those are the kind of things we're thinking about from a fun, experimental, point. But yeah.
Awesome. Jessica, any advice that you would share for the audience of like things that you've learned that you didn't think like when y'all were first building this out, that you were like, oh, like looking back, I wish I knew that a year ago.
Um, so I think setting smart goals, like I'm sure tell our interns too, like, and for me, those being like attainable is one of them. I think there's a million different ways to, build out a keep warm strategy. There's a million different pieces of content you can share, but, thinking about from a holistic perspective, what are the goals of our internship program? And, how do the goals of this keep warm strategy, how are they relevant to that? And are they attainable in this kind of, for people starting off in this first year? And then you can really like build on it because it can be so scalable, like I was saying. And I think too, using what you have, but whenever I first thought about this, it was like, oh yeah, we have all these, LinkedIn posts or these blogs, or we can, like have all these things that are already published. But um, what we ended up doing was moving kind of beyond that and looking at, okay, what are we sharing with people during that first week, during that first meeting, onboarding and orientation. And we moved almost all of that content into Abode. And like I said, like trickling it, just giving them little bite-sized pieces for, those 6 to 9 months. But then one of the side benefits of that is during that, onboarding kickoff meeting, we have the opportunity to really engage with them and have them and their managers set goals for their internship, walk them through, how are you going to achieve these goals? What resources do you need to use, that kind of thing. And so our, campus talent specialists who are doing that talent development, they're the subject matter experts on talent development, like spending their time sharing with interns, like, here's what all these acronyms mean. Like, this is where, the folder where you can find the thing you need to find. Like, that's not a good use of their time. Like, these are very talented people. And so, how can we better utilize that time that they're spending together, um, you know, using their expertise with the interns and making that time together so much more impactful and meaningful. And so I think that has been, one of the things that I wasn't expecting that we've been able to do.
I really like that idea of almost kind of taking that intern orientation week, which everyone knows is daunting and a bear for everyone involved and amongst itself, right? And almost kind of giving the kind of sneak preview of expectations and trying to get some of that stuff out of the way. Maybe isn't the best way, term to use it, but right, like again, get it out there. And I like to think about it from the standpoint of if you are 90 days out and you're sharing sneak preview of intern orientation, imagine the data of those that aren't engaging with that content. It's probably pretty telling of a renege potentially coming, right? Because this is effectively what they're going to be doing in their job. And if they're not doing or engaging with effectively what is going to be their first week at your company, that's probably a telltale sign that a potential renege might be coming, down the line as well. And Justin, as y'all are going to be right, kind of launching this and rolling out your key form, like any preparation of kind of challenges or anything that y'all are thinking about ahead of time?
I think how we roll this out, right? How do we get this in front of our students
Yeah.
that we hire? That's something that they're sometimes oversaturated with
Mhm.
things, right? Like how do we get them engaged early and often? I love that the platform is going to allow you to see who clicks on things and all of that. So like then put the pressure on those, right? That aren't clicking and aren't listening. Like maybe that's a personal phone call to say, hey, checking in, right? Things that we couldn't do in the past because we weren't pushing this stuff that early. We were pushing it 2 to 3 weeks out, but now pushing it earlier and more often is going to be helpful. So,
Mhm.
I think our challenge is will our students take to it, right? How do we get them to if they're not, and how do we follow up? So we're thinking through who's responsible for which students and all of that. Um,
Yeah.
and also teaching our managers too, right? The managers play a giant role in this. We all know that whether they step to the plate or not, but how do we get them up to speed as well? So.
Je- Jessica, how do y'all think about kind of manager responsibility slash engagement, right, in tandem with y'all's key form?
Yeah, so that I think was one of the biggest challenges that we didn't really have an idea, starting off. So again, my company's kind of the opposite of Justin. So we 100% of people, except for me, are on site. Like our managers are not in front of a computer for more than I'd say 30 minutes to an hour a day. They are not people who are gonna, they're like getting them to open an email, much less respond to it, is like an accomplishment. And so for us, we were very unsure of how the managers would be, interested in this or even want to engage with it. I have been so excited that so what we ended up doing was we kind of just mentioned it in passing to like the business leaders and managers. Hey, we're implementing this new thing. You might hear people talk about it. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to log it. You don't need to know anything about it. But if you hear interns say abode, that's what this is. This since I think it was in July or August, we've had multiple business leaders come to us and say, "Hey, so when this new class of interns is starting, can we see how they're engaging in abode?" And I was like, "Excellent question. Yes, you can." And I mean, for years we would, like I said, encourage managers to reach out, tell business leaders, oh, you need to like engage. We would send, the calendar reminders, send them the topics of ask that it's March, ask them about spring break, like that kind of stuff. They would never do it. And now they're coming to me and saying, hey, who do I need to be reaching out to? How does this, how do my interns stack up against the other interns? Are they engaging? Like, who are the red flags? Like, and that kind of thing. And that is so exciting because people are always more likely to do something when they think of it themselves. So, them saying, hey, who do I need to make a phone call to versus me saying, hey, you need to call these people, there's a much different follow through rate on that. And the interns are way more likely, honestly, to engage with someone who says, hey, I'm going to be your manager, or I manage who is going to be your manager. They're much more likely to respond to that person than they are to me, whose emails they've been seeing for 6 months. And so, yeah, I would say one way that we have also kind of encouraged that manager participation is so we do almost all of our recruiting, also different from Justin, in person, which requires us to have, business unit representation. And so we do on-campus rep training. And previously that was a virtual meeting. I would say not great engagement. We moved that to Abode this fall, and we trained 30% more people than we had in previous years. And we got incredible feedback. I mean, people said like they were writing paragraphs. I had questions throughout the training, like if a student asked you why you work at Lithko, what would you say? People were writing full sentences, like full paragraphs. And so I was thrilled about that. But also, over 50% of the people who are going on campus are going to be intern managers. And so now they have used Abode. They know what it is. They understand it. They understand the type of content that's in it. And I think that, with that, kind of we will slowly be able to integrate them more into Abode because they see the value in the platform and in the strategy as a whole. And so I would say, the key there is just kind of, like I said, like starting off with like the small, measurable, attainable tasks and, goals. And then like as things build and as people get more interested, engaging them in it more.
This is, and I want to make sure we're cognizant of time here to answer questions. I know this has been a whirlwind of a conversation, and there's a lot more that we can dive into, right? If we didn't have an hour, and those that have heard me, I can talk for a lot longer than that, would be able to do that. I'd love for each of you to just kind of give a key takeaway for the audience, whatever we've covered today, even if we haven't covered it, about how y'all think about keep warm, right? The populations it's going to, whatever you want to kind of take away before we open it up for Q&A for everyone.
Justin, you
I'll
want
go.
to go?
Yeah. My key takeaway is that my ideas were great, but I need to learn from Jessica and add a little bit more. But no, this is more, that's serious, but also a joke at the same time. I'm trying to be comical, but that this is more important than ever, right? I think that this is, it helps on all fronts, right? It helps them onboarding, but it also helps their engagement and their desire to be here, wherever it is. And that I think one keep warm strategy is different from everyone others. Like what works for me is not going to work for Jessica. What works for Jessica is not going to work for me. But there's probably things that we could share within that would make that experience great for regardless of the situation. Um, yeah, those are my couple.
Yeah,
Jessica.
I think just the kind of similar to what Justin said, like there's so many different ways that we could take this. We can focus more on the connection, we can focus more on the onboarding. Like there's so many different ways, but start off with one and like work on that and then continuing to build on that because again, like I think scalability is something that we've both mentioned, like needing to be able to get more interns in, keep them in with the same or fewer number of people than we've had in the past. And so, if we can focus on that like one pillar, that one thing, and have it be really good, then we can focus on the next thing after that.
Awesome. And we'll open it up to Q&A here. I'll say my takeaway is think about kind of the participants that you're hiring in, right? And kind of root your keep warm on feedback and data of, even if you haven't had one, or if you have and it's been mainly email driven and you're seeing problems, like root kind of whatever your next step is as it relates to kind of best engaging your talent based on who you're hiring, or right, and the feedback that they provide at the end of the day. Anything that I can say that's going to be better than. So I'll open it up for Q&A. We have one question here. How do you balance and Jessica, I'll kick it to you. How do you balance the idea of providing learning tasks prior to the start date that are and that are, interns are not paid yet until they start? So kind of how do you balance the kind of the optional, required, I think conversation that people have, right, of what you share that is kind of like recommended versus not recommended, so to speak. I think that's kind
Yeah.
of how y'all think about that.
Yeah. So I think for me, sharing that like this, we can't require anyone to do anything. This, will not impact you. We're not going to come in day one and say, actually, you don't have an internship because you didn't do a boat. Like that's not that's not a thing. But here are the benefits. Like you are going to be more prepared. You're going to understand what you're doing. You're going to be able to make an impact. And interns who make an impact are very likely to get job offers at the end of the summer. And so, it is a benefit to you and your career. I think, for us, our company culture isn't, I would say, quite as, I think there are much different companies or enterprises that have kind of thoughts about like, oh, we need to pay them if they're doing things for us. I think an option there could be like, give them and tell them to add an extra hour to their first week, or, like add up the amount of time that they would have spent in a boat and say, like put in that you worked, 32 hours this week and take off early on Friday or something like that. I think there are ways that you could compensate them for their time. But again, just focusing on what the benefits are for them. Like this isn't for me and my, like personal benefit. This is for you.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Any other questions diving in here? I really appreciate everyone's time today and making sure. I know I said we'd get out a little early here. Give just a couple seconds. If there's any other questions relating to anything we discussed or we didn't discuss that you might have questions on, I'll make sure that I'll be sharing the slides with everyone as well as the recording for those that want the recording to share with any peers, whatnot. Today, obviously, feel free to reach out to myself or Justin or Jessica. I'm sure I can offer up their ideas and thoughts on LinkedIn, whatnot as well. But really appreciate the conversation today, everyone, and thanks for taking the time. And Justin and Jessica, thanks so much for being awesome partners again and for doing this and sharing your advice and expertise. We appreciate it.
I was going to say, please reach out, right? I think we're such a tight community in this early career space that I think nothing is proprietary. We can all learn from each other. So I welcome any reach outs, any meetings that people want to pick brains. Like I love this kind of stuff. So please feel free.
Yeah, I'm always the one who's sharing my screen, telling people, oh, here's an Excel sheet that you might like, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and I'm
Awesome.
excited to see, Justin, I'm so excited to see your results and hopefully, how everyone's engaging and that your reneg rates just, plummet. So,
Zero. I want zero. So
Awesome. Well,
all right.
thanks, y'all. I appreciate it.
thanks, everyone.
Thanks.